Fast forward to 1964. We're on Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. A classified program is taking place called Atlas, testing dummy nuclear warheads being launched from intercontinental ballistic missiles. A photo instrumentation specialist, Lieutenant Bob Jacobs, was tasked with capturing the launch of 2 missiles from 100 miles north of Vandenberg at Big Sur.
A giant 18-wheel truck came trucking up this Forest Service road and brought this enormous catadioptric telescope with a focal length of about 2,000 inches. The normal length on a 35mm camera is 2 inches, so you can imagine how big the image would be in a 2,000-inch lens. So I said, wow, this is neat. And the guy who had built this thing was named Walt Manning, Dr. Walt Manning at Boston University. At any rate, we got the telescope all set up, and we were ready to go, and Major Mansman called, and he said, tomorrow morning at 0600, get ready because we're launching an Atlas missile, and we want you to photograph that with the big BU telescope. I went, okay. So at 0600, we were up and ready to go, and an Atlas missile popped up through the ground fog that was covering the whole coastline all the way down there. It was beautiful. We took the film back to Vandenberg, where it was processed, and a day later, I got a call from Major Mansman. He said, come up to my office. So I went to his office, and he said there was a movie screen set up and a 16mm projector, and there was Major Mansman, and as I recall, 2 guys in gray suits. On the screen was the film we had shot. We could see clearly on film the nose cones separate, and then we saw the dummy warhead. And suddenly, into that frame, an object flew in, chasing the warhead and so on at the same speed. It's going between 6,000 and 8,000 miles an hour at that point. And it fired a beam of light at the dummy warhead. The object flew up like this, shot another beam of light at the dummy warhead, went around like this, shot another beam of light at it, went down like this, shot a beam of light like this, and then flew out the same way it had come in. At which time, the dummy warhead did this and fell out of the frame.
Florenz Mansman analyzed the film frame by frame with a magnifier, what's called a loop magnifier. And he's on record by the mid-'80s, he was writing to Jacobs in private letters saying, what I saw with the magnifier was a disc-shaped object with a dome. And before each of the 4 flashes of light were observed, the whole disc pivoted, flashed the light, pivoted back, and then pivoted again for the next flash.
The lights came on, and Major Mansman said to me, were you guys screwing around up there? And I said, no, sir. And he said, what was that? And I said, it looks like we got a UFO. And he said, Lieutenant Jacobs, you are never to speak of this again. It never happened. The 2 guys in the gray suits stood behind him looking at me. He said, do I make myself clear? I said, yes, sir. What else are you going to say to the major in charge of you?
So who were these mysterious men in suits?
Mansman said they were CIA, and they confiscated the film, not a higher Air Force office. CIA confiscated the film.
Didn't they delete your records from the government as well? People denied that you worked at Vandenberg. Is that right?
They denied there was ever a Robert Jacobs in the Air Force. And in another inquiry, they denied there was ever a Robert Jacobs at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Then they denied there was ever anybody named Robert Jacobs in charge of the 1369th Photographic Union division that I ran.
And you managed over 100 people, so it's pretty easy for you to corroborate.
Yeah, I had 134 guys working for me, and I had two friends from college who were my commanding people. And I also have something called a DD-14. I have records here. My officer efficiency reports are in there. I can't get rid of stuff. My wife keeps saying, clear that shit out of the file cabinet over there, Bob. I go, no, I might use it. And sure enough, it's turned out to be valuable in defending myself against the infamy of the CIA. But we didn't have a launch on that date. there was no Atlas launch that day. Well, goddamn well there was, because Robert found the files from Vandenberg listing that particular launch in detail.
So they did not. They also scrubbed the launch itself from the records.
Correct. Never happened.
Wow.
It never.
And your mailbox was blown up as well, right?
My wife and I had been out to a movie. We came back from a movie about 10 o'clock at night, and there was a message on my answering machine. And it said, fireworks in your mailbox at night. Oh, what a beautiful sight. You're going down, motherfucker. And my mailbox blew up. I live on a farm. I had a rural mailbox, and so there was an explosion. My mailbox blew up. I took that quite seriously. I bought an ammunition for my gun.
Well, we now basically know that in 1952, the CIA's Office of Scientific Intelligence took the real UFO investigations underground. They did this while performing a psychological operation on the American population in the form of Air Force's Project Blue Book, which was explicitly meant to downplay and explain away UFOs.
Project Blue Book was the best they could do at the time because they felt they had a real project going on that was secret. Okay.
Is that true?
And the Air Force did.
Oh, I didn't know that. So really, it was the CIA and the Atomic Energy Commission responsible for the real, deeper research on UFOs. The FBI and the Air Force's Project Blue Book were kept in the dark. This clip from the great James Fox movie Out of the Blue is perhaps telling.
Edgar Hoover wrote several letters stating that the investigation of unidentified flying objects is not and never has been within the jurisdiction of the FBI.
Here's just another example of joint CIA atomic energy research going on around UFOs at the time. At the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis, on the 25th of October in 1962, a nuclear test called Bluegill Triple Prime was executed. It involved a sub-megaton X-1 nuclear warhead launched minutes before midnight at Johnston Atoll in the South Pacific. According to many on the ship witnessing the test, a bright, fiery object tumbled out from the plume of the blast. There is apparently video evidence of this. In fact, an Australian intelligence officer who's dealt with sensitive nuclear assets named Jeff Cruikshank says that this video was later sanitized and censored to cover up the UFO. He says that a white triangle was later superimposed on the video where the object tumbles out of the plume.
Only a few milliseconds after the detonation, the fireball is approximately a kilometre wide. A bright, fiery object tumbles out from within the nuclear fireball. And it's plain as day. You can slow it down and see this very bright object. It must be at least 50 to 100 metres long, tumble out from within the nuclear fireball.
You believe that that is some kind of craft?
Just like the one that was following the Atlas 8F test, but this time it was a real warhead.
Cruikshank also maintains that the recovery effort was documented in the original ship's deck logs, and that a spherical debris with some very interesting properties was found. These tests were overseen by the Albuquerque Operations Office, whose Atomic Energy Commission director was none other than Lawrence Guice, who happens to be Jeff Bezos' maternal grandfather.
Is it everything you thought it would be?
But Jeff Cruikshank is just one source, and he's in Australia. Harold Malmgren, a direct advisor to 4 American presidents, including JFK, is a man whose credentials are beyond reproach. And just look at what he tweeted. Am now reconstructing my personal interactions with Los Alamos, Lawrence Guice, Bluegill ICBM interception tests, 1961-62, and JFK visit to Los Alamos, November 1962. So it sounds like JFK might have gotten into UFOs in November of 1962. All of this might explain this letter of admittedly controversial provenance that was supposedly FOIA'd in 2005. It's from JFK, but it's dated November 12, 1963, just 10 days before his death. In the letter, the president is asking the CIA director, John McCone, for all data on unknowns so the Americans could coordinate better with the Soviets on détente, and so the Soviets wouldn't mistake UFOs for acts of American aggression. All of this would also explain some very interesting recent statements made by Trump's FBI appointee, Kash Patel, about the JFK file.
You're talking to a guy that's read the entire JFK file. The things that we can't release have nothing to do with the questions you guys are asking. The answers you guys want pretty much have them. There's very minimal stuff that can't be seen for things that you wouldn't even think are related to.
I want to be clear. We don't have enough clarity on the origins of this letter to know that it's conclusively real. It was supposedly FOIA'd by a guy in 2005. So I don't know if it's real, but it fully comports with Malmgren's story that JFK visited Los Alamos in '62. It also makes sense in the context of JFK's détente efforts with Russia. John Greenwald has done some good work investigating this document and has found some anomalies in it. If any other researchers can either prove it to be a forgery or real, that would be extremely helpful and revelatory. So have at it. But I digress. Let's move away from speculation and get back to the abundance of overwhelming hard facts around the widespread UFO nuclear link.